Chapter 13, Splat Goes into Action. When Lloyd, Harvey and Dinah arrived at school the next Friday morning, there was something slightly different about the atmosphere in the playground, a feeling of suppressed excitement. No one pranced about or did imitations of Eddie Hare or boasted about being in the quiz team. The children were standing in their usual circles chanting away, but the chant was a bit faster, and from time to time people looked at each other breathlessly. It was plain what they were thinking. At 6 o'clock that evening, they would be sitting in the hall and they would be on television. The members of Splat kept well away from each other. There was no need to speak. They knew what they had to do. For a whole week, they'd been going over it at their meetings until the arrangements were perfect. This morning, there were only 5 of them in the playground. Ian had hidden on the way to school, ready to carry out the first part of Lloyd's plan, and Mandy carried a note forged by Dinah, which said that Ian would not be at school that day because he had a cold. As the prefects gathered on the steps and the children started to move into line, Lloyd looked round quickly to check that Mandy and Ingrid were there. As he glanced at them, they crossed their fingers quickly and moved off. Lloyd drew a deep breath. Nothing must go wrong. He only hoped that he had thought of everything. The big outside broadcast lorries trundled through the town, carrying the equipment needed to set up that evening's Eddie Hare show. Inside, the drivers and technicians were laughing and chatting to each other. This was the easy part of their job. Once the show started, they were tense, not knowing what was going to happen from one moment to the next. Whatever Eddie Hare sprang on them, they had to cope with somehow. But if they got the cameras and lights and microphones set up in good time, they could cope with anything. At the traffic lights in the middle of the town, the first driver paused and looked at his sat-nav. "Right," he said. "We turn left here and—" He stopped suddenly. A tall, fair-haired boy in immaculate school uniform was jumping up and down beside his cab, trying to attract his attention. He opened the window and leaned out. "Yes, Sonny?" Ian put on his most virtuous and reliable expression. "Are you the television people? Coming to do the Eddie Hare show at our school?" "Yes, that's right. You looking for us?" Ian nodded. "The headmaster sent me. He asked if you would take the lorries round the back way. You go left here, right up the little lane, over the bridge, and would you like me to come along and show you? I've got to go back to school anyway." "Sure, hop up." The driver grinned at him. "Nice to come to a school where we get looked after so well." Ian climbed up into the cab and began to direct. Behind, he heard the other lorries start up and his mouth went dry. If only it worked. If only they did not suspect anything. "Left here," he said, his voice completely calm. "Then right." "You sure you've got it straight, Sonny?" As the man beside him swung the wheel, he glanced sideways doubtfully. "I don't see any sign of a school." "That's all right," Ian said airily. "You can't see it from here. Go through those gates and I'll hop out and tell the headmaster you've come. Then you can bring the lorries up to the door one by one." Still frowning, the driver turned the wheel again. Slowly the lorry crunched through a pair of tall gates into the disused quarry. In front of them, tall cliffs of chalk stretched up on every side, cutting off any view. Ian threw the door open and slipped down out of the cab. "Wait here, won't be a moment." As he ran back to the entrance, the other 2 lorries were rolling through the gates. He waved cheerfully at the drivers and waited until they were clear, then began to shove at the heavy gates. For one panicky moment, he thought they were not going to move, but they swung together suddenly with a clang, and he pulled out of his pocket the 2 big padlocks that Lloyd had given him. Quickly, he clipped them shut. "Hey!" said a voice from inside the quarry. "What are you doing?" Not waiting to hear any more, Ian ran off down the road. Mission 1 was safely completed. Now came the tricky bit. He found the bush where he had hidden a bottle of cooking oil, pulled it out and set off towards the school. Somehow he had to sneak in and out again without being seen. Mandy and Ingrid were not feeling so cheerful. Their part of the plan was next, but they had to wait until the end of the afternoon to start it, and they were not at all sure that it would work. They sat in their separate classrooms biting their nails, and when they met at lunchtime, Mandy whispered, "I'm scared. Suppose it all goes wrong." Ingrid glanced round to see if anyone was watching, then thumped her crossly. "It had better not go wrong. You know what Lloyd said. We must get all possible enemies out of the way. Now shut up about it. I'll see you outside the staff room at 4 o'clock. Mandy fretted her way through the afternoon, but at 4 o'clock she was standing bravely in the corridor outside the staff room when Ingrid appeared. "There's a terrible racket going on in the headmaster's office," Ingrid whispered. "He's on the phone to television headquarters, wanting to know why the cameras and things haven't arrived. I could hear him right through the door." Mandy grinned. "At least Ian's first bit went okay. Let's hope the second bit did too, or we might be in trouble. All the teachers are in the staff room. I've been watching them go in. Give me a couple of minutes to get down to the swimming pool and then knock on the door." She ran off, and a minute or two later, Ingrid rapped sharply on the staff room door, panting as if she'd been hurrying. When Mr. Venables opened it, she began to speak quickly. "Please, sir, I've got a message from the headmaster. Eddie Hare wants to talk to all the teachers in the swimming pool building." "The swimming pool?" Mr. Venables raised his eyebrows. "It's a stunt he's got planned." Ingrid gave her most innocent, frightened smile. "He wants you all to join in, and the headmaster's sounding rather cross, and—" Her lip trembled from genuine nervousness, and that appeared to convince Mr. Venables. He called over his shoulder, "Come on, everyone, we've got to go down to the swimming pool. Some mad stunt of Eddie Hare's." Groaning wearily, the teachers began to emerge from the staff room. They trooped out of the building and across the playground towards the single-storey block where the swimming pool was housed. When they were halfway there, Ingrid said anxiously, "Oh, do please hurry, run! The headmaster was so impatient." The group of teachers broke into a trot, making for the open door of the swimming pool. As the first few of them hurried through the door, their feet slipped on the oil which Ian had spread carefully all over the tiles. Slithering towards the water, they began to yell, but this only brought the other teachers running faster. As the last of them slipped through the door, the splashes began. One after another, they fell into the swimming pool, skidding uncontrollably over the edge. Immediately, Mandy appeared from her hiding place round one corner, waving the swimming pool key. As Ingrid pushed the door shut, she slid it into the lock. The shouting, splashing teachers had still not realised that they were not involved in one of Eddie Hare's crazy pranks. It would be some time before they discovered that they were prisoners. Ingrid winked at Mandy. That should keep them busy. Let's get out of here. At the same moment, Lloyd and Dinah were crouching round the corner from the prefect's room, quarrelling in whispers. "They're not all there," Dinah was saying. "Rose and Jeff are still around the school somewhere. If we don't get them, it could be very dangerous." "Don't be bossy," Lloyd frowned. "All the other four are there, but they might come out once they've eaten their sandwiches. And if we don't lock them in and get down to the hall, someone's going to notice that we're not eating ours. We'll just have to do without Rose and Jeff." "But they're the worst." "Oh, shut up." Lloyd knew she was right, really, but it did not make him better-tempered. "You're always interfering." Dinah shut her mouth tight. No use saying that she had only been trying to help. She knew what Lloyd was like now. He wanted to be in charge all the time. Well, let him. She did not really think trapping the prefects would make any difference anyway. "Go on then," she said quietly. "Let's get it over with." Like a shadow, Lloyd stepped forwards and locked the door of the prefect's room. Then he put his ear to it. "Hey," he mouthed. "They're saying something." Dinah came up beside him. Through the wood of the door, she heard Simon's voice reciting, as if he had learnt it by heart. "And I take charge of transport, with 20 children to help me, according to Master Plan, Section C." Lloyd frowned. "What are they on about?" he said noiselessly. Dinah put a finger to her lips and leaned closer, hearing Sarah's voice now. "I'm in charge of work camps, Master Plan, Section F, with 50 children to help, all people to be split up according to age, museums and public buildings to be used for housing them, and—" "Oh, come on." Lloyd pulled Dinah's sleeve. "I don't know what they're up to, but it doesn't sound as though it's got anything to do with today. Let's go and eat our sandwiches. Then we can sneak off again and see how Harvey's doing." Dinah dragged her ear from the door, feeling frustrated. She was sure she was missing something very important, but Lloyd was right. They could not risk being seen with their ears to the door. "Okay," she said. "They sound as though they'll go on talking for hours, and I don't suppose it'll matter about Rose and Jeff." "Of course it won't matter," Lloyd said angrily, but he was not very happy as they crept off down the corridor. It was the first thing that had gone wrong. Back in the middle of the town again, Ian was beginning to grow restless. Perhaps he had missed Eddie Hare. He might have been looking for the wrong sort of person. Perhaps the purple curls were just a wig, and the crazy clothes were only for wearing on television. In that case, Eddie Hare could have slipped past 100 times without being noticed. What an idiot he was not to have thought of that before. He frowned and marched up and down by the traffic lights, stamping his feet to keep them warm. Then he saw it. a little low sports car zooming along the main road towards him. There was no mistaking it, even if the number plate had not been EH1, even if the car had not been painted in stripes of red, yellow and mustard colour. For there at the wheel was Eddie Hare himself, his huge bunch of purple curls almost filling the windscreen, and a cheerful grin on his loony face. Bounding with relief, Ian started to leap up and down beside the red traffic light, ready with his next set of false directions. And for a moment it looked as though it was going to work. The sports car squealed to a stop, and Eddie Hare leaned over and opened the window. "Please," Ian started, but Eddie Hare was obviously used to being stopped by waving children. He did not even give Ian a chance to finish his sentence. Instead, beaming all over his face, he shouted, "Want an autograph, do you? Bless you, boy. You don't suppose I can write, do you?" With a screech of laughter, he banged the car into gear, roared the engine, and was away as the lights changed, leaving only a cloud of exhaust fumes. "Blast it," Ian said softly. "Blast, blast, blast." Then he began to run as fast as he could towards the school. He had to warn the others that the plan was not working perfectly. Luckily, he knew where he would find them all. In the school boiler room, Harvey was shaking with fright, reading over and over again the instructions that Dinah had given him. "It's quite safe if you do it in the right order," she'd said firmly, "but if you don't, you might kill yourself." He looked at his watch. Why didn't the others come? It was after 4:30. He could not leave it any longer. Oh well, he would have to do without their help. Pulling a torch out of his pocket, he looked nervously up at the big red handle on the wall which said, "Main Supply." "Here goes," he murmured. Gripping the handle tightly with his right hand, he pulled it hard down. Instantly, the cellar was pitch black. Harvey switched on the torch and wrenched open the door of the fuse box. With his left hand, he began to tug out the fuses, cramming them into his pockets. There was a quick clatter of feet outside the door. Glancing nervously over his shoulder, he saw Mandy and Ingrid run in. "Smashing," Ingrid said enthusiastically. She leaped for the fuse box. "We'll give you a hand." As her fingers reached for a fuse, Lloyd and Dinah came creeping in. "Okay, H," Lloyd muttered. "Everything else is going to plan. Well, nearly. Ian's coming. I saw him racing through the gate while we were on our way up here. Now let's get a move on with those fuses. Once we've chucked them away, they won't be able to do anything, even if they do get the lights and cameras here." They had just cleared the fuse box when Ian arrived. He pulled a face, gasping for breath. "I couldn't stop Eddie Hare," he panted. "He really is as crazy as he seems on TV. But I've got the lorries locked up in the quarry, okay? And, hey, Harvey!" Harvey's hand, holding the torch, had begun to shake wildly, flashing light distractingly into everyone's eyes. "Knock it off, Harvey," Lloyd snapped. "We've got to get out of here." But, stuttered Harvey. Oh, look." He gestured despairingly towards the door, and the others spun round. There, outlined in the doorway, was a tall figure in a gown. On either side of him stood Rose and Jeff, smirking. "Well, well," said the headmaster. "You've all been very busy today, haven't you?"